Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is my Hi-Fi Rush Rhythmn Master video walkthrough. We're on track 3, it's called Trial by Volcanic Fire. And I don't know if I've mentioned, but this game is amazing. And you should play it, because it's on Game Pass right now. And if you don't have Game Pass, you can buy it on PC. Or just buy it in general, because it's that fucking good. But however, if you're on PlayStation, you can't, which is the one sad thing about it. But hopefully in time it'll make it to your shores, and you can check it out and see what you've been missing out on. Because I do think that this is probably the most essential thing to come out in video games in quite some time. And I've just beaten Rhythmn Master and finished recording. Most of it was pretty much exactly what I expected it to be. I can now confirm that I do not like this difficulty too much. I just find it redundant. And I like everything about the difficulty except for the decay. Because when you get to D rank, if this rank in the right now drops to D from C here, I will just die. And the problem with that, of course, is that it's very easy to do it in certain situations. Like in some fights, like this one right now, this one's absolutely fine. You've got somebody to attack, you've got somebody to parry, you've got somebody to interact with. But later on, there are certain engagements where you have to do a very specific thing to even stay alive, because if you don't have the time or the rank to be in the room anymore. And I never feel like difficulty is good when they force you to rush and really panic and get close to something and force an issue, when the issue itself should really be coming to you. Like, I feel like some of the best difficulties, you don't have to go to the enemies and like, do a very specific, perfect thing to stay alive, because they're too busy trying to kill you and you just play the game, and by naturally playing the mechanics you stay alive anyway. And for the most, 90% of this difficulty is absolutely fine. But there are just these sequences that turn up, and I'm going to point them out when they do, because I feel like they're the moments where the difficulty really bears its teeth, and it's not very elegant, because it doesn't feel like you're getting what you due. Because in a lot of games when you lose, it's you, or it's potentially something you might not agree with, but fundamentally it might still be you. Sometimes it is the game, but a lot of the times you can't tell in the moment if it is. As I jump into the wonderful pillar of magma there. Delightful. Which is that technically incorrect? Because isn't magma lava that's inside the volcano? Are we in the volcano? Is this technically lava in a volcano? I suppose there's some geologist out there that's rubbing their hands together right now with this terminology, but anyhow, we're on the fire level, which I think you can all see. A really, really fun level, this one. It's got a good song, good beat, and really, really nice aesthetic. I love the caverns. I just like the whole idea of this. There's a lot to explore here, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that these crystals that are everywhere needed to be breakable. I can't think of a single reason why you can't break any of the crystals, and I can't think of an additional reason why that breaking wouldn't have a fantastic sound attached to it, and it would just make the whole thing feel really satisfying. And when I look at the stuff that I love about this game, which is pretty much all of it, the rare things that I find lacking are always the most small and sundry elements. Like, I wish there was more things to break, because breaking things in this game is really fun. And because you're constantly on this beat, you feel like you should be interacting with the world a little bit more, and I think being able to break more things would have been a really, really nice addition. And I'm super curious as to why that wasn't the case. Because it seems like it could have easily been done, because if you see any boxes, you can break them. You see anything else, you kinda can't break it. And if you look at the world, they've took the time to populate it with all kinds of signs and equipment and like balustrades and barriers and barricades. So why not go that extra level and let us beat it up a little bit, because there's lots to see and there's lots to interact with. But none of it reacts to what you're doing. Which is a shame, because, you know, the game is... Like right now, these boxes and those barrels, they can be busted. And if I hit these signs to my left, they will spin. But other than that, I don't know, I think it's one of the first problems you see with the game, and it's such a minor one that you forget it really quickly. But we're going to be moving towards irritating the next target who has a key. Who is not a boss, actually. You don't fight him. He's one of the bosses in the game you don't fight, and they play up to it quite interestingly. But we were introduced to the blue enemy here, and I spoke about this creature on my stream, and I really, really like this monster's design, because I think he just looks cool, but I would really, really like it if there was an entry-level version that actually had the hammer instead of turning it into the sword immediately, and then they could have had a medium tier enemy that used the weapon that this guy's using right now. But the things to bear in mind with this creature is he likes to do a 2-hitter, he likes to do a single thrust, and when he goes up in the air, when you hear that glint on the next beat, he will dive bomb at you. And you can use these along with directional parries to build some benefits depending on what chips you're using. At this moment in time, I'm experimenting with, I think it's additional battery charge from batteries, just to see if it's any good. I play most of the game without almost any chips, and then I mess around with that one. And if you want to get the best out of all the combat and out of what you're doing, you want to find the chips that complement how you play. And there's a lot of them, and there's a lot to experiment with. But one of the things that seems to be definitely the direction you want to be moving in is anything that brings reverb back quickly, anything that generates batteries seems to be what you need. Because it enables you to use more reverb, and it enables you to get those score multipliers, and it all benefits each other as I hit the lava again. It's funny too, the environments hurt me more than the fights do in many cases. Because the environmental resets like that, they take off a big chunk of HP, and then later on in the game, there are some particularly nasty ones where they want you to do it along with the beat. And it's conceptually, it's really, really fun, because as long as you follow the beat, you're okay. But it's one of the only parts of the game where not following the beat gets you punished really harshly. And on this difficulty, if you do it from a new game, you start with a lot of low HP, and you can die in 1 hit from enemies. You can die in 2 hits, 2 to 3 hits usually, depending on what hits you. And a lot of the times, the stuff that hits you will be things you didn't see, because you're too busy amidst the chaos creating all this crazy graphics on the screen. Because some people have criticised the comic book aesthetic of Hi-Fi Rush with like the text going off and everything and kind of the pop art aesthetic. I think that's one of the game's strengths, and I don't think that all of it is as good as it could be personally, artistically, because it's just one of those things, isn't it? Art is very personal. It's everybody sees something different and everybody appreciates something different, but I think the only area that really stands out to me is I think sometimes some of the telegraphs are a little bit less clear than some of the other ones. And the beat hit circle, I just don't like the look of it. I wish you could change it. And who knows, maybe they'll add that later on, because if you notice, my 808 is emitting a vertical beat wave instead of doing the horizontal one, and I changed that in the menu. You can change it to a bunch of different ones, which I think is really nice. So if you could change the graphics on the beat circle so that they could fit the world a bit more and look like the hood perhaps, or just look a little bit more coherently designed and I would say more tasteful, because you can tell what they've done. They've gone for clarity. They've gone for the ultimate visual clarity, and it's what they should have done. So I agree with them, and I understand why they did it. I just think, you know, if you look at the stun bar on the enemies, how it's got the black around it, and it's got the jaggedness to it, and it really pops, and it fits in with the world. I feel like, same with the text and the hood, all of these assets have got a really, really nice eye for design, and then the circles look like DSP used Comic Sans and added them as like a thumbnail. And I hate to drop the DSP on something so wonderful, but it gets the job across of being clear, but artistically I think it looks terrible. And another area they could have done would have been with when you hit a perfect note and you get the clef, and the clef has got the teal and the kind of, it's kind of a neutral red, isn't it? They could have made them those colours and given them that comic book like aesthetic. Hell, even some of the enders when you hit people, they do that big star of damage that's got the texture on it. They could have maybe made it look a little bit like that. Because it's the one area of the design, and the whole game is so stylish, and it nails its aesthetic. Even the stuff I don't like, I can see them nailing the aesthetic and really getting in there. But this is the one area that just stands out as almost placeholdery. And it makes me wonder if internally, when they were testing the game, if perhaps people said that in the midst of the chaos, it was a bit too much to see. I think that's an experience issue, because the more you play, the more you learn to read the situation. And I think people can definitely put in the time if they want to. As I get another arse, there you go, bad score. But then I get the S star, which is vexing. Just goes to show, doesn't it? But Hi-Fi Rush, running around breaking boxes, breaking barrels, picking up gears, picking up microchips, and moving swiftly towards acquiring our new assist, who's going to be helping us get rid of armor. And be really happy that you've not fought armor yet, because it's one of the areas of the game where I think that the balance definitely takes a hit in as far as difficulty, because it gets a lot harder, and the reasons for why it's harder can be a lot more frustrating to a new player. Fortunately, this walkthrough should help you get on the other side of it. Although someone in my community was mentioning that they were able to break the armor in a well-timed button press, and I don't know if they were smoking crack or if they've just figured out something that I didn't, but I went into training mode with the shield guy for a little while, and I could not repeat what they managed to find, so I'm curious to see what that hidden tech is. Because this game does have a lot of things which seem quite cool. One of the things that I've noticed, which I don't really know if it's real or if it's just incredibly lucky, but there's times when you do a move, and it's like the ender of something, so it's pretty big, and it clashes with an opponent's attack as they're about to hit you, and you almost get priority and knock them back and do a parry. And I don't know if I'd ever want to do this intentionally outside of like a combo video or trying to show it off as a mechanic, but it's one of those things that happens by accident, and you kind of go, ooh, okay, there's more than meets the eye going on here, and it's something to be explored definitely, because it can come in handy. And it's going to help people who button mash too, because if you mash to an ender, and you time the ender serendipitously, you might stay alive. But I don't think anybody's playing this difficulty in button mashing, because you'll just die. Like, it will beat the living shit out of you. And it's just because you won't generate enough damage or stun on the enemies. And on this difficulty, the stun is a lot higher. I didn't realise how much higher it was until I watched some other people play the game, and they were stunning enemies in like 3 hits. And it's just like, whoa, I forgot what it was like when it was like that. But I have to say that I really hope the developers can come in and add a difficulty that's like this one, but gets rid of the rank decay. It's one of the things you're going to hear me repeat a lot in these videos, because it's the one area of the game that I don't enjoy. And I thought that this was going to be really hard too. I thought it was going to be like New York Minute, where you had to do the whole level without fucking up once. This is interesting as well. We've got baboons here with shields, and we've got the standard sword guys as well. And I'm showing you some juggles here and some OTGs which are really, really powerful. And if you're looking for the most basic way to fight, guys, the basic way to fight is to focus on one enemy, stun him, and then launch him into the sky, and then just beat him up in the sky. Usually you're completely safe when you do this. This is one of those levels that has environmental hazards too. I like the environmental hazards on this level because they don't get in the way of the gameplay. I cannot say the same for the electric floors, and we're going to talk a lot about electric floors because having now done the walkthrough, I still think that room is the worst fight in the game, and I don't think putting flaming, like incendiary damage, and electric damage together was a really good idea. This is frustrating to watch this because the parries on all these enemies are free, but I don't have it yet. Anyhow, we get rid of him with the super, put him down. One thing I really love about that encounter is because the fire's dropping down, but it only punishes you when you're on the ground. So if you're in mid-air and they're directly beneath you, as the fireball comes down, it doesn't hit you out of the air. And I think that would have been really, really mean if they'd done that, so I'm super grateful that they didn't. And that's the issue with the flaming enemies as well. There is a flaming enemy, which is like that sword enemy we just fought. He just punches instead of sword attacks. He is one of the only enemies in the game that is designed to hit you out of the air. There's 2 or 3 enemies that can do it. I think the Brutal can do it by accident sometimes, and I think that sometimes the Baboon can do it on his jump, but I think that's by accident as well. The other enemy that does it intentionally is one of those larger crab enemies with a shield. He can shoot you in the air. And of course the gun guys can shoot you in the air if you're completely static and they start doing their thing, but that seems to be quite rare. But the flame dude has an uppercut that's designed to anti-air. And they put him in a really awkward room where they want you to jump, and when you jump, he knocks you out of the air. And to me, it feels like a really overtuned and incredibly unfair encounter. And of course, at the beginning, you can target him, stun him, and kill him, and it's not an issue, but do you know how to do that? You know, do you know how to compellingly do that very quickly? And can you do that every time without the floor interfering and without him running away and with all the things that can go wrong? Like, it's definitely a skill test and a skill check. A really, really big one, too. But this is Zanzo. He's the boss of this level that you don't fight. And we're going to be moving into an area now where this is where I don't like the level design as much coming up here. I think that the game on one playthrough, as a casual one and done experience, I think the game works on almost every front on what it's trying to do. But when you replay it and you're not here for the story and you're still getting hit by tutorials and there's these moments where you're doing anything but fighting, this is where the pacing really starts to show its teeth. And this level in particular, moving forward, this next series of levels is an area where I think the environments, although they do change and they do fit the narrative, I think they start to be less interesting than what they were at the start. And this could be just my bias coming through here, because I love the open sky levels when you're out in the city. I think those levels are just quintessential Futurama, and it's fucking amazing. And I love the end of the game as well, like the last 3 missions, it's just banger after banger after banger of really cool environments, and you adore being where you are. And in this area, being in the volcano is a wonderful mix-up, because we did the streets, we did the city, we did a little bit of the factory, now we're in this volcano. It was all going so strong, and then you go to these augmented reality rooms, and it's the same room repeated 3 times. And because it's augmented reality, I feel like they had a wonderful opportunity here to put you anywhere. They could have put you on top of a plane flying somewhere. They could have put you under the sea. You know, they could have put you on the moon or in space. They could have done so many things. And they literally, because it's part of a gag in the story, they literally reuse fights you've already done in the level. And I don't get it. I just don't get it, because to me, this game is so close to being an absolute masterpiece. It's so difficult to find flaws that when I do pick them, they tend to be these really small, weird, niggly things in the background, and this is one of them. Because you'll have to tell me in the comments, guys, did you notice at all that you spent a long time activating elevators in that kind of sci-fi lab area, and then as soon as you hit that lift, you get off the lift and the game speeds up again and it goes back to being really solid, and it goes back to a lab and kind of slows down again, and then as soon as you get past that, you do the museum, you do the awesome, you know, boss fight with the wolf, and then you do the awesome swinging around the city again, then you do the amazing building site with a big robot. I feel like the start of the game has this wonderful crest, and then it hits this lull in the middle where it's still great and it's still better than anything right now in my opinion, but it sets such a high bar. I wanted it to keep on with it. And then towards the end, like the middle third kind of sags a little bit, because the game is a bit too long in my opinion. But then at the end it comes back on that same note. And I don't want to say that even the middle is essential, because the storytelling and what they have you doing is really important. It builds the plot, it builds what's happening. The environments are still cool, they're still detailed, they're still enjoyable, but I just don't think that they hit that same high. And speaking of a high or a low, depending on how good you are at this, so this is the parry mechanic, and when this first turns up, it's frustrating because it's forced, and games that force you to parry tend to be quite divisive. Some people love them, some people hate them. This one right here, the reason the game forces these parries on you is because it needs you to understand that this is a mechanic you need to engage with, because if you don't, you're going to struggle with the rest of the game. At the start, it feels forced, it feels uncomfortable, it doesn't feel fun, it feels like it overstays its welcome a little bit, but as you play and get more comfortable with it, it becomes second nature. It gets a lot easier and it gets a lot more fun. And I say this, guys, not because I don't like it, because at first I thought it was a bit awkward, and then later on, I think the fight against Corsica's too long. I get what they were going for, but it's just too much. However, I watched some people talk about the game, and they said they didn't like the parrying, and it's because the parrying is very skillful. A lot of people that are going to struggle with parrying in this game are used to easy parries. And it's funny that I've said this, because the parrying in this game is easy, but it's tight. And you might be thinking, well, how can it be easy and tight? Doesn't that clash? Isn't that a contradiction? Well, it's easy because it's on the beat. So if you've got good rhythm, and you know when the beat is, you know when to parry. It's tight because it's quite precise timing, just statistically. And I don't know the frames on this move, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was like 10 to 15 frames. It wouldn't surprise me if it was less, but the difference here is they give you this wonderful metronome to tell you when to hit. And once you realise that everything happens on the beat, you can parry anything. The problem is the intervals between the parries. And if you're anything like me, you don't want to look like you're spamming parry, because I despise that, thanks to Sekiro. And I don't like pressing it more times than I need to, because it makes me feel like a bitch. And I don't want to play like that. So if you do, you can feasibly, every beat, tap, 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 you can tap parry. And if you stand in a room, guys, and you tap parry on beat, you will be invincible. because there are few things that can get through it because it's that good. However, if you're not in time and you're not on that beat, you'll get hit. And on this difficulty, you can't get hit too many times or you just die. And the thing that gets this really interesting is, not only are you going to have to use this as part of the game, as part of a system that they're going to demand you to engage with, but you can use it in every fight too. And this is our first fight with it against a swordsman. And the idea here, guys, is when you can buy some upgrades, because we don't have any upgrades just yet, whenever they flash, the next beat they will attack. And if you know the enemy, you know what they're going to do, so you can react accordingly. But usually, it tends to be one hit or two. So as long as you just go parry, or parry, parry, like that, you'll be fine. And you can do it when they're not facing you. You can do it in any direction. As long as you press the button at the right time, you'll be absolutely fine. Later on, when we get directional parry, it will be better if you press towards the opponent and then press parry like you did in Metal Gear Rising. Because when you do this, you get a bonus on score and you get a bonus on stun. And it's just going to make it a little bit more precise, a little bit more technical, and it will make you a better player. And then from that, you can go into things like parries with the assists that you have using reverb, and you can use that launching technique where you catch an opponent and throw them up. But this starts off quite tight and quite difficult, but you realise the game is very generous. They could have been a lot meaner with this parry. Goods could have given you chip damage, and only perfects could have reserved your HP. If they would have done that, parrying in this game would be a lot harder, because to get consistent perfects requires just timing. We're talking about the most precise timing in the game. And it's not that it can't be done, guys. Every time you see a perfect, it's I'm doing it. But it's hard. Like anything else, we're not robots, you know, we're very, very fallible, and never has it been more aware than when you try and do something that's timing based, because there's no such thing as like a human metronome or a human drum machine, you know? As much as we like to think Gene's a human drum machine, because he kind of bloody is, the old atomic clock still is not completely perfect, you know? But now we have Magnet, now we have parry, now we have the beat hits, now we have the assists, now I got shot from behind in the middle of one, which was really annoying. Now we have the capacity to play the game. You know, it's like the World of Warcraft episode of South Park. After they get rid of the evil, now they can play the game. And they're going to try and ask you to parry now, so watch it, and just parry as they do it. I fucked that one up, so it just goes to show, you know, I'm not perfect, guys. And the thing here, if you mess up, guys, and your timing goes out, if you start mashing, you're just going to do worse. And you can't mash these either. If you mash them, you'll have to get really lucky to win those engagements mashing them. Like, in the game, you can mash, absolutely. But against that stuff, you have to follow that beat. You have to tap your foot. You have to nod your head. You have to do whatever it is that helps you to get those notes. And then this is the brutal. So I don't know this enemy very well at this point, because you don't fight him that often. But he's really, really cool, and he's really, really dangerous. He has a move that can pretty much instantly kill you. And at the moment, I'm just going to do what I usually do to big enemies, which is if you jump in the air about where their head is and you do combos in the air, they can't hit you. So you can just build all the stun on them for free while they try and punch you, and then you can launch them and kill them. It's really, really good against enemies with shields. It's really good against enemies with those bubble shields, and we've already put him to the state where he's going to do his desperation parry. So this mechanic, guys, is really interesting. Did you see that shockwave he let out? If you jump over that or get out of the range of that, this will not happen. If this hits you, this is a rhythm parry attack, as they call it. It is a mandatory parry sequence where if you do it, you will win. But they're demanding. But afterwards, like that, the enemy will no longer be around. And these are the problem that a lot of players are going to bump into. They're going to do these sections, they're going to fight these monsters, and then these monsters are going to go desperation, they're going to hit them with these parries, they're going to fail the parries, they're going to die, and they're going to get frustrated. So, all I can really tell you guys, use training mode. If you're having a problem with a monster and you can't do those sequences and he keeps beating you up, be it those samurai guys, be it the brutals, be it whatever it is, the birds, go into training mode with Peppermint, fight that monster, get him to his threshold where he starts doing it, and just practice. Because it really is like anything else. When you first see them, they feel almost impossible. They feel just too much. And then after you do them a few times, you get the rhythm, you get the flow, you can anticipate them, and then before you know it, Like, when I play the game now, guys, I tap it along to the rhythm when they're showing the rhythm because I know it well enough to get it now. And I don't always do it perfectly, and I still make mistakes, but I'm only on my 3rd playthrough, you know? You might be on your first playthrough, so making mistakes is fine, it's what's going to happen. And you're going to see it in this guide. I don't have the same experience towards the end of the game as I do at the start of the game, because I've played the start of the game more. So by the time we get to like mission 8 or track 8 and they start bringing out the flamethrower units, I don't know their moves as well, so they beat me up a lot more. And this project is going to be kind of similar to my Devil May Cry 5 project that I made all those years ago, where it's not going to be the best project I can make, it's not going to be the cleanest, it's not going to be the most impressive, but it's going to show you where I am. It's going to give you something to attach to, something that's going to hopefully motivate you and inspire you to tell yourself that you can do it. Oh, and then we have this guy. I forget the name of this enemy, but I fucking hate it. So you have to focus on this wheelie guy with the staff that creates the generation of shields. If you don't, you're going to have a really bad day. That monster is really fast. He runs away from you and he shields everybody. It's just a nightmare. But we've got the aerial unit as well, along with a couple of standard soldiers. Seems like I'm messing around here with some of the aerial combos, and if you're new to this game, or you're new to this project and you're watching it and you're like, Chris, why aren't you using any of the other combos? It's because I don't have them. It's insane to think just how much stuff you get by the end. Like, I have like 4 combos in the air by the end of the guide, you know? I've got about 5 or 6 combos on the ground, all kinds of stuff to mess around with, and on this I've got maybe 2 or 3 things, and it's insane. But now we have... This is really hard, guys. Remember when I said that there was a part of this game where you just die immediately? This is it. You need to get to this guy and start hitting him. So, did you see how I jumped above him and I'm just whacking on him like this? This is exactly what you want to do. Jump in front of him and then hit his face. Doesn't matter that he's shielded, it's what you want. If you do not do that, you will die instantly because your rank will go to D. I died there a bunch of times until I noticed that you could jump in front of him and keep hitting him like that. That is the place where this difficulty goes to die and I stop enjoying it. So don't get disheartened, guys, if you keep dying. It's frustrating, but as soon as you get that rhythm, as soon as you build that rank up, you will not die there. You've messed your rank up. Your rank will be terrible because you've died and continued, but you can worry about that on another run. Thank you for watching. You take care now.